Hi all, today's instructive theme will be becoming a lighthouse on the chessboard. So the basis of this instructive theme is let's re-examine this actual radio conversation between a US Navy aircraft, the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, and the Canadian authorities off the coast of Newfoundland in October 1995. The conversation went a bit like this. Canadians, please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid collision. Americans, recommend you divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Canadians, negative, you will have to divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. Americans, this is the captain of a US Navy ship. I say again, divert your course. Canadians, no, I say again, you divert your course. Americans, this is the aircraft carrier U.S.S. Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north. I say again, that's 15 degrees north, or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship. Canadians, this is a lighthouse. You're cool. So, that is actually perhaps an urban myth story, but here is the game which kind of demonstrates that one side is kind of a ship and the other is a lighthouse, kind of entrenched and not going anywhere. So the game is Gata Kamsky versus Mamedyarov. So they're both around 2720 or above. Kamsky's 2723, Mamedyarov is 2742. So e4 was played by Kamsky, and c5 was played. After knight f3, e6, so standard Sicilian stuff, open Sicilian. So knight c6 here was played, now knight c3, and now black played a6. So white played classically now with bishop e2, a humble bishop move. After d6, black has a kind of Scheveningen formation with his pawns. Castles, knight f6, and after bishop e3, bishop e7 was played. Now white continues with a sort of classical plan of f4, so it all looks like book standard. After castles, queen e1 was played. So queen e1, the queen can potentially come to an attacking square like g3 or maybe h4 in some variations. Black now took on d4, and after bishop takes d4, played the logical move b5. So black is intending to put the bishop on b7 and put some pressure on the e4 square. White now played a3, and after bishop b7, white now actually played queen g3. So black didn't want this kind of dangerous pin hanging over him with the knight. So what he did was play g6. In this position it seemed to work okay. After bishop f3, now black played a very interesting move, trying to decoy white's knight from the defence of the e4 square. He played actually a5. And instead of white taking on b5, well, I think black would be better actually already after takes. Just knight takes e4 knocks out a centre pawn for that flank pawn, that b5 flank pawn. And black's doing fine here. What white played was kind of controversial. He played b4. So this is a sharp sort of move. It's allowing black to have this intensified pressure on the c line. So black's already strong on the c file. And it's as if white is further weakening a key square, the c3 square. So in terms of entrenchment, black has, a more solid position and can use the c file now to add a lot more pressure to white's position, which he does now. He just plays rook c8, and after rook d1, he takes on b4 and simply plays rook c4. So it looks as though black's play is just very positional, very logical, and it's all about intensifying the c file pressure and intensifying e4 pressure. So here one question is what would happen if white played e5? That looks kind of dangerous, but d takes e is possible, and after fe, well, if bishop takes, then queen b6 check. So here just rook takes d4. So white is in a kind of passive position already after this rook c4. He plays actually king h1, so prophylactic kind of move to stop these checks in some variations. And now black plays knight d7. So it seems black's fine here, and also has the handy bishop h4 available in some lines. White now played bishop e2. So this is a really forcing move, forcing the issue from black. you know, just leaving this pawn to be gobbled. So black took that pawn, and after knight takes b5, black played bishop takes e4, and so black's just nabbed a pawn up here, and potentially, you know, black's got more centre pawns and a greater establishment in the centre, which allows him to use like the e4 square. So black's position is very well entrenched, you know, like a lighthouse. And white is like the ship in this game. White played bishop g6, you know, sending a tactical, you know, warhead. Basically, though, it doesn't have to be taken. You know, black doesn't have to play king takes, and after queen c3 check lose that rook. And even this position isn't so clear, though. You know, black still got some compensation here. What black did do instead was even stronger. Black, after this surprise-looking move, just played bishop takes c2. And I want to ask you now, you know, in this position, bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, what do you think? You know, isn't black's position a lot more fortified, you know, like the lighthouse? d6 is not a problem here because of the double protection. And once black gets in d5, you know, look at black's pawn structure. So after rook d4, black played d5. It's a really solid pawn structure, a really strong entrenchment in the position. You know, black's not going anywhere. He's protecting his rook, and bishop e4 is going to come up next. So white took on b4, recapture, and after bishop c1, bishop e4, and, you know, black has such a solid and also attacking position now, and two pawns for the exchange, which is normally ample compensation. After rook c7, queen d8 was played, and now black pounces out with queen h4, threatening queen e1 check. So white defends that, but now queen f6, threatening queen a1 check. So the back row is a bit weak, and white really doesn't want to move a pawn forward to defend that. He plays queen e3, and after check he plays queen c1. After queen a2 he throws a check in, and now plays queen d1. So potentially there's queen d4 check, but black just plays knight f6, and black's position is still really solid. White, though, now compromised his position finally with h3, so there's a slight weakness created by h3. And here black really pounces on white with bishop d2. Queen f1 was played, and bishop takes f4 was played. Now knight c7, but black is just far too entrenched now in the position. Black has become the lighthouse of the chessboard here. After knight e8, black simply took, and now simply played queen e3 with the horrible threat of queen takes h3 check, exploiting this pin on this g2 pawn. So white played bishop f3, because after takes, white can't take with the queen because of queen e1 mating, so he has to take with the pawn. So these horrible isolated pawns. And black now just played queen d2, so threatening a mate in 1. White played queen g1, and now black simply played queen e2. And the white queen is just overloaded in this position. It's going to lose pawns because queen g2, for example, queen d1, queen g1 just loses the f3 pawn. And now black can simply continue with something like this with a massive advantage. Maybe just drive this d pawn home. So actually in this position, you know, after queen e2, white resigned. Let's have a look in overview and summary at what happened here. Black played a nice positional game and collected basically a strong central pawn as a result of this a5 indirectly, because white played a bit too forcing moves in nature, so he lost the b and e pawns. But this gave, you know, black a very strong entrenchment in the position, you know, like the lighthouse versus the ship. And white simply just had no defence in this kind of position. Although the exchange up, black's able to just improve and improve the pieces, using, for example, the e4 square, strongly supported by the pawn on d5. And now it was white's king that was being exploited. So white's king was slightly vulnerable, and this forced another concession from white, this h3. And now, you know, the nice move bishop d2 was played. Also knight h5 would also have been potentially dangerous as well, because the bishop couldn't take because of the g2. So both bishop d2 and knight h5 are pretty strong. So white's having a very hard time just defending here. So after queen f1, black just played bishop takes f4. And now it's really all over. It's all kind of technique, especially for a 2700 player with such a solid, and forced position. He's like the Lighthouse now versus the ship of white position. So white's really just being blown away. He'd be forced to be losing lots more here, starting with that f3 pawn. He resigns here, but this could have been like the continuation, with the queen still being strongly in the centre and just herding this d pawn forward. So, I hope you enjoyed that game. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.